I'm Daniel, a 42-year-old architect, living in a quiet Seattle suburb with my wife, Claire, and our 2 kids. Our life was a well-designed blueprint. Mornings with coffee and laughter, evenings with board games. Claire, a freelance illustrator, had this radiant charm. Her hazel eyes sparkled when she sketched. We'd been married 15 years, and I thought our foundation was unbreakable. But foundations, I'd learned, can crack silently. It started with subtle shifts. Claire's phone buzzed more often, her fingers dancing over the screen with a secretive smile. She'd laugh at messages, then tuck the phone away when I entered the room. "Just a client," she'd say, her voice a touch too bright. I trusted her, so I brushed it off. But the late-night texts grew frequent, and she'd slip out to run errands at odd hours. I noticed her wardrobe changing. New dresses, bolder colors, a perfume I didn't recognize. "For work," she explained, but her eyes avoided mine. One evening, I found her sketchbook open on the kitchen table. Instead of her usual whimsical landscapes, there were portraits of a man. Sharp jawline, intense eyes, someone I didn't know. The detail in each stroke felt intimate, obsessive. My stomach twisted, but I said nothing. I wanted to believe it was just art. Then came the gallery event. Claire insisted on going alone, claiming it was professional networking. I stayed home with the kids, but the unease gnawed at me. When she returned at 3 a.m., her hair slightly mussed, she smelled of that unfamiliar perfume and something else. Cologne, maybe. She kissed me distractedly and went to bed. Couldn't sleep. I checked her phone while she showered the next morning. The passcode had changed. That was the moment I knew something was wrong. I didn't confront her. I needed proof. I started paying attention, her schedule, her excuses, the way she'd linger at the mirror before leaving. I felt like a detective in my own marriage, piecing together clues I didn't want to find. The man in the sketches haunted me. Who was he? A client? A friend? Someone real, not just a muse. My trust in Claire, once a cornerstone, was eroding, and I hated myself for doubting her. But the evidence was piling up, and I couldn't ignore it anymore. The sketches became my obsession. I'd sneak glances at Claire's sketchbook when she wasn't home, memorizing the man's features. He had a scar above his left eyebrow, a detail Claire captured with unsettling precision. I started cross-referencing her contacts, her emails, anything I could access without crossing ethical lines. Nothing matched. Then one Saturday I saw him. I was at the farmer's market with our daughter, Lily, buying strawberries, when I spotted Claire across the street. She was laughing, her hand brushing a man's arm. The man from the sketches. He was tall, maybe late 30s, with that scar glinting in the sunlight. They stood too close, their ease too familiar. My heart pounded as I watched her lean in, whispering something that made him grin. Lily tugged my hand, oblivious, and I forced a smile. I didn't confront them. I needed to understand the depth of this. I followed them discreetly, keeping Lily distracted with a pretzel. They wandered to a cafe, sitting outside, their knees touching under the table. Claire's laughter was different, freer, almost reckless. I took photos from a distance, my hands shaking. The man's name I overheard was Ethan. He was a photographer, someone Claire had met at an art workshop. Their conversation was laced with inside jokes, references to moments I wasn't part of. I felt like an outsider in my own life. That night, Claire was radiant, humming as she cooked dinner. I asked about her day, fishing for lies. "Just errands," she said, her eyes on the cutting board. I wanted to scream, to show her the photos, but I held back. Revenge was forming in my mind. Not violence, but something sharper, colder. I needed to know how far this went. I installed a tracking app on her phone while she slept, hating myself for it. The app revealed her movements. Late-night drives to a loft downtown, hours spent at Ethan's studio. The betrayal wasn't just emotional. It was a parallel life she'd built without me. I dug deeper. Ethan had a website showcasing his photography, portraits, landscapes, and there, in a private gallery, were images of Claire. Not her usual poised self, but raw, unguarded, in ways I'd never seen. The intimacy in those photos cut deeper than any words. I saved everything, building a dossier of her deception. My love for her was still there, tangled with rage. I didn't want to destroy her. I wanted her to feel the weight of what she'd done. Claire's absences grew bolder. She'd claim she was at art retreats or client meetings, but the tracking app told a different story. Ethan's loft, a trendy spot in Belltown, was her second home. I cross-referenced her calendar with the app's data. 3 nights a week, sometimes more. She'd return home with stories of boring workshops, her voice rehearsed. I played along, nodding, asking bland questions, while my mind churned with plans. I hired a private investigator, a discreet woman named Marla, who blended into Seattle's artsy crowd. Marla confirmed what I dreaded. Claire and Ethan were inseparable. They attended gallery openings, dined at hidden bistros, even took weekend trips to the coast, passing them off as solo getaways. Marla's photos showed them holding hands, kissing in alleyways, their chemistry undeniable. But what made this betrayal non-standard wasn't just the affair. It was the world they'd created. Claire had a pseudonym, Lila, in Ethan's circle. She was his muse, his collaborator, co-signing his work as if our marriage didn't exist. Marla uncovered more. Ethan wasn't just a photographer. He ran an underground art collective, a group that blurred lines between performance and reality. Claire, as Lila, was their star, posing for avant-garde installations that pushed boundaries of intimacy and trust. These weren't just photos. They were live exhibits, attended by elite collectors. Claire had told me she was illustrating children's books, but she was living a double life, one where I was erased. The betrayal felt like a theft, not just of her love, but of our shared history. I confronted her indirectly, mentioning a gallery I'd heard about. Her face froze. Then she laughed it off, saying she'd never been. The lie was so smooth it chilled me. I started attending these exhibits incognito, wearing a cap and glasses. Seeing Claire as Lila was surreal. She was confident, untethered, nothing like the wife I knew. Ethan directed her every move, their connection electric. I felt invisible, a ghost in her new world. But I was learning, cataloging every detail for what was coming. My revenge wasn't about confrontation yet. I wanted to dismantle her facade, expose Lila without touching Claire. I contacted Marla again, asking her to infiltrate the collective, pose as a buyer. She agreed, slipping into their events, gaining Ethan's trust. I fed her questions to ask, planting seeds of doubt about Lila's authenticity. The collective thrived on trust. I'd used that against them. Claire had no idea I was closing in, and that gave me power. Marla's infiltration was surgical. She posed as a wealthy art patron, charming Ethan and his collective. She praised Lila's work but subtly questioned her origins, hinting at inconsistencies in her backstory. Ethan, arrogant and trusting, brushed it off, but I could see the seeds taking root. At one event, Marla accidentally mentioned a fictional artist with a similar pseudonym, watching Claire's reaction. Claire's smile faltered, her eyes darting to Ethan. She was nervous, and I savored it. I escalated my plan. Using an anonymous account, I leaked vague rumors on art forums, suggesting Lila was a fraud, possibly plagiarizing another artist's identity. The collective's insular world thrived on reputation. Doubt was poison. Ethan's social media showed strain. Fewer posts about Lila, more solo work. Claire, at home, was distracted, snapping at the kids, her phone buzzing constantly. I asked if she was okay, feigning concern. "Just stress," she muttered, avoiding my gaze. I knew she was scrambling to protect her alter ego. I dug into Ethan's past next. Marla found tax records, old lawsuits, nothing damning, but enough to paint him as unstable. I fed this to a gossip blog, framing it as concern about the collective's leadership. The blog post spread, and Ethan's followers started asking questions. Claire's double life was fraying, and she didn't know why. At home, she was unraveling, leaving sketchbooks open, half-finished portraits of Ethan scattered like confessions. I photographed them, adding to my arsenal. One night, I attended another exhibit disguised again. Claire performed a piece involving mirrors. Her reflection multiplied as Ethan narrated a story of betrayal. The irony was thick. I slipped Marla a USB drive with doctored emails, fabricated messages suggesting Lila was selling the collective's secrets to a rival group. Marla planted it in Ethan's studio, ensuring he'd find it. The next day, Claire came home pale, claiming she was sick. I knew Ethan had confronted her. The collective was imploding, and she was caught in the crossfire. I felt a twisted satisfaction, but it wasn't enough. Claire still thought she could salvage Lila, salvage Ethan. I needed her to lose everything she'd built. I started crafting a final blow. A public unveiling of Lila as Claire, not with accusations, but with undeniable proof. I contacted a journalist, someone outside the art world, and began feeding them the story anonymously, photos, tracking data, Marla's findings. The journalist was intrigued, sensing a scandal. I was careful, ensuring nothing traced back to me. Claire's world was about to collapse, and I'd watch from the shadows. Claire's behavior grew erratic. She'd leave abruptly, claiming last-minute meetings, but the app showed her circling Ethan's loft, never entering. The collective was turning on her. Marla reported heated arguments, Ethan accusing Lila of betrayal. The USB drive had done its job. He believed she'd sold him out. Claire's texts, which I now accessed through a cloned app, were desperate, pleading with Ethan to trust her. His replies were cold, dismissive. Her second life was crumbling, and I felt the ground shifting under our marriage. At home, Claire was a ghost. She'd stare at her sketchbook, pencil motionless, or snap at me over nothing. I played the supportive husband, asking gentle questions, offering tea. Each lie she told about clients' deadlines tightened the noose I'd crafted. The journalist, Emma, was piecing together the story. I sent her Claire's sketches, Ethan's photos, and a timeline of their rendezvous, all anonymized. Emma called it a modern masquerade, a tale of identity and deception. She wanted to interview Lila, but I advised waiting, let the collective implode first. Marla's final report was a goldmine. Ethan had expelled Lila, publicly shaming her at an event I didn't attend. Claire came home that night, eyes red, claiming exhaustion. I saw the humiliation in her posture, the weight of losing her alter ego. But she still hadn't confessed, still thought she could hide it. I upped the ante. Using a burner email, I sent Ethan a package, printed screenshots of Claire's texts, her real identity circled in red. I included a note. Lila was never yours. She's my wife. I wanted him to feel the betrayal, to turn on her completely. The fallout was immediate. Claire's phone lit up with Ethan's calls, then stopped. He'd cut her off. She locked herself in the bathroom, sobbing. I knocked, feigning worry, but she brushed me off. The next day, Emma's article draft landed in my inbox. Sharp, damning, with Claire's double life laid bare. It wasn't published yet. Emma wanted my input. I suggested a public reveal, timed with the collective's next exhibit. Let Claire face her audience as herself, not Lila. Emma agreed, planning to attend undercover. I wasn't done. I wanted Claire to feel the exposure before the article hit. I left subtle clues at home. A printed photo of her and Ethan, tucked in her sketchbook. A note in her purse. Who is Lila? She grew paranoid, checking locks, questioning me indirectly. I stayed calm, letting her unravel. My revenge was close, a cruel symphony building to a crescendo. Claire had betrayed me, not just with Ethan, but by erasing our life for her fantasy. Soon, she'd face the consequences, and I'd be the architect of her fall. Claire's paranoia was palpable. She'd flinch at every notification, her eyes darting to her phone, expecting Ethan or the collective to reach out. They didn't. My package to Ethan had severed their bond, and the art world was whispering about Lila's disgrace. I watched Claire spiral, her once vibrant energy replaced by a hollow unease. At home, she barely ate, her sketchbook untouched. I played the doting husband, cooking her favorite meals, asking about her day. Each lie she spun about non-existent clients fueled my resolve. The journalist Emma was ready. Her article was a blade, sharp and precise, detailing Claire's double life as Lila, backed by photos, texts, and Marla's intel. I suggested a reveal at the collective's next exhibit, a high-profile event in a renovated warehouse. Emma would attend, posing as a critic, and publish the story hours later. I wanted Claire to face her audience, stripped of her alias, before the world read about it. But first, I needed her at the exhibit not as Lila, but as Claire. I planted the bait. At dinner, I casually mentioned hearing about a big art show in Belltown, dropping details only someone in the know would recognize. Claire's fork froze midair, her face pale. "I'm not going," she said too quickly. I shrugged, saying I might check it out myself. Her eyes widened, but she said nothing. I knew she'd go, to salvage her reputation or confront Ethan. The trap was set. I contacted Marla, asking her to spread word in the collective that Lila might appear, ensuring Claire's presence would spark chaos. At night, I left more clues. A gallery flyer on the counter, circled in red, with Lila scrawled in the margin. Claire found it, her hands trembling as she stuffed it in the trash. I saw the fear in her movements, the realization that someone knew. She started checking her phone security, unaware I'd cloned her data. Her text to a friend revealed her panic. "I think someone's watching me." I smiled, knowing I was under her skin. My revenge wasn't about confrontation. It was about dismantling her world, piece by piece, until she had nowhere to hide. The exhibit was 3 days away. I prepared my final move, a projection at the event, curated anonymously through Marla. It would display Claire's sketches, Ethan's photos, and snippets of her texts, revealing Lila as Claire. The collective's elite would see it, and Emma would capture their reactions. Claire's betrayal, her secret life, her erasure of our marriage, would be her undoing. I felt no guilt, only a cold clarity. She'd chosen this path. I was merely lighting it up. Claire was unraveling. She'd stopped leaving the house, claiming a stomach bug, but I knew she was avoiding Ethan's world. Her phone was silent now, the collective silence louder than any accusation. I kept the pressure on, leaving subtle taunts. A mirror in her studio with Lila, written in dry erase marker, erased before she saw it but smudged enough to raise suspicion. She'd stare at surfaces, searching for signs, her trust in reality eroding. I wanted her to feel hunted, just as I had when I discovered her betrayal. I met Marla in a dimly lit cafe to finalize the projection. She'd secured a tech contact in the collective, someone disgruntled with Ethan, willing to rig the warehouse's screens for our anonymous art piece. The projection would loop Claire's sketches, her intimate photos with Ethan, and a timeline of her double life, ending with her real name and a photo of our family. The message was clear. Lila was a lie, built on my pain. Marla warned me the fallout would be brutal. Claire could lose her career, her social circle. I nodded, unflinching. She'd stolen my trust. I'd take her identity. At home, Claire was a shadow. She'd hug the kids tightly, as if sensing an end. I asked if she wanted to talk, my voice gentle. "I'm fine," she snapped, then softened, touching my hand. For a moment, I saw the woman I loved, not Lila. It hurt, but the hurt fueled me. I checked Emma's draft again, tweaking details to maximize impact. The article would name Claire, not just Lila, linking her to the collective's shady dealings. Marla had dug up financial irregularities, enough to taint Ethan's reputation too. The exhibit was tomorrow and I was ready. I bought a ticket under a fake name, planning to watch from the crowd. Claire still hadn't confirmed she'd go, but her behavior betrayed her. She spent hours in her closet, pulling out dresses, then shoving them back. I knew she'd choose something bold, something Lila would wear, to reclaim her place. I left one last clue, a note in her purse. "See you at the show." She found it that night, her gasp audible from the bedroom. She didn't confront me, but her silence was admission. She was going. My plan was a clock, ticking toward detonation. The kids were staying with my sister, a precaution I'd arranged. I didn't want them near the fallout. As Claire slept, I reviewed the projection files, my heart steady. Her betrayal wasn't just a fling. It was a calculated reinvention, a life where I didn't exist. Tomorrow, she'd face the truth, and I'd watch her world burn. Not with fire, but with exposure. Revenge, I realized, wasn't about hate. It was about justice, cold and deliberate. The warehouse pulsed with light and sound, a cavern of exposed brick and pretension. I blended into the crowd, my cap low, tickets scanned under my alias. The collective's elite mingled, sipping overpriced wine, oblivious to the bomb I'd planted. Claire arrived late, her red dress a defiant choice, her face a mask of confidence. But I saw the cracks, her hands fidgeting, her eyes scanning for Ethan. He was there, across the room, surrounded by admirers, ignoring her. The air between them was thick with betrayal. The exhibit was a maze of installations. Mirrors, projections, abstract sculptures. I lingered near the main screen, where Marla's tech contact had rigged my piece. The program was set to interrupt the collective's showcase at 10 p.m., peak attendance. Emma was there, notebook in hand, her critic persona flawless. She nodded at me subtly, confirming she'd seen Claire. The stage was set, and my pulse was steady, a metronome of anticipation. Claire moved through the crowd, trying to reclaim Lila's aura. Some greeted her warmly, others whispered, their trust shaken by the rumors I'd seeded. She approached Ethan, her voice low, pleading. He turned away, his face stone. I caught fragments of their exchange, her begging for a chance to explain, him accusing her of sabotage. My USB drive had worked. He believed she'd betrayed him. I felt a grim satisfaction watching her isolation grow. At 9:55, I positioned myself near the exit, a vantage point to observe without being seen. The crowd gathered for the collective's main presentation, a performance piece. Claire stood alone, her bravado fading. The lights dimmed, and the screen flickered. My projection began, unannounced. Claire's sketches filled the warehouse, her strokes vivid, followed by Ethan's photos, her unguarded, intimate moments. Gasps rippled through the crowd as texts appeared. Her words to Ethan, then her real name. Claire Thompson, wife, mother. The final image was our family photo, my face circled, a silent accusation. Claire froze, her eyes locked on the screen. The crowd turned, some recognizing her, others confused. Whispers became murmurs, then a roar. Ethan stormed to the tech booth, shouting, but the projection looped, unstoppable. Claire's mask shattered. She stumbled, her dress a stark contrast to her pale face. Emma scribbled furiously, capturing every reaction. I watched, motionless, as Claire's world collapsed. She scanned the crowd, searching for the source, but I was invisible, a ghost she'd created. She bolted for the exit, tears streaming, but the crowd's judgment followed. I stayed, letting the chaos unfold. Ethan was shouting at his team, the collective's reputation in tatters. My revenge was alive, a public execution of Claire's lies. But it wasn't over. The article would drop at midnight, sealing her fate. I left the warehouse, the night air cold, my heart a mix of triumph and emptiness. Claire didn't come home that night. I waited, the house silent, my phone buzzing with alerts as Emma's article went live. Titled The Masquerade of Lila. It was merciless, detailing Claire's double life, the collective's financial shoddiness, and Ethan's role in enabling her deception. Social media exploded, art forums, local blogs, even our neighbors' group chats. Claire's name was everywhere, tied to scandal, her illustrations now a footnote to her infamy. I read the comments, a mix of pity and scorn, and felt nothing. She called at 4 a.m., her voice broken. Daniel, I'm at a hotel. I need to explain. I said calmly, come home tomorrow. We'll talk. I didn't sleep, replaying the exhibit, her face as the projection unmasked her. When she arrived, she looked small, her red dress swapped for sweats, her eyes red-rimmed. She sat across from me, hands clasped, and started talking. No lies this time, she admitted to Ethan, the collective Lila. It wasn't about you, she said, voice trembling. I needed to be someone else. Her words cut, not because they hurt, but because they confirmed her betrayal's depth. She'd chosen a fantasy over our life, erased me to become Lila. I listened, nodding, letting her pour out excuses. Ethan's charisma, the collective's allure, her fear of being just a wife. When she finished, begging forgiveness, I said, I need time. She nodded, tears falling, and retreated to the guest room. I didn't tell her I'd orchestrated her fall. She'd never know. I contacted a lawyer that day, quietly preparing. My revenge wasn't done, exposure was step one. Consequences were next. I wanted Claire to lose more than her alter ego. I gathered evidence, her texts, Marla's photos, financial records showing she'd funneled our savings into the collective. I'd use it to protect myself and the kids, ensuring she'd face legal and financial ruin. But I moved slowly, deliberately, letting her stew in her shame. The art world turned on her. Galleries dropped her work. Clients vanished. Ethan's collective disbanded, his reputation as toxic as hers. I watched Claire try to salvage her career, sending desperate emails, but the damage was irreparable. Our neighbors whispered, our kids' teachers asked if we were okay. I shielded Lily and Max, saying Mommy was stressed, but they sensed the fracture. Claire's guilt was a weight, and I let it crush her, offering no comfort. My love for her was a ghost, buried under her lies. The final act of my revenge was coming, and it would be colder, sharper than anything she'd imagined. I waited a week, letting Claire drown in her consequences. She moved through the house like a specter, avoiding mirrors, her sketchbook sealed shut. The kids were with my sister again. I needed space to execute the endgame. My lawyer, Rachel, had reviewed the evidence. Claire's financial misconduct was enough for a divorce settlement that favored me. But I didn't want just assets. I wanted her to feel the betrayal's echo, to live with its permanence. I called a meeting with Claire, neutral, at our dining table. She sat, expectant, hoping for reconciliation. I slid a folder across the table, labeled Lila. Inside were printouts, her texts, bank statements showing thousands diverted to Ethan's projects, Marla's photos. Her eyes widened, hands shaking as she flipped through. How did you? She whispered. I didn't answer, letting the documents speak. Then I played a recording, Marla's voice posing as a buyer, discussing Lila's fraud with Ethan. Claire's face crumpled, realizing the depth of her exposure. I'm filing for divorce, I said, voice even. You'll lose the house, your savings, and primary custody. The kids deserve better than this. She sobbed, begging, saying she'd change, but I was stone. I'd already transferred our joint accounts to protect the kids' future, leaving her with scraps. The financial ruin was my second blow. The third was social. I'd sent the folder to her parents, her sister, her closest friends, anonymously. They'd know Lila, know Claire's lies. Her family cut contact, her friends ghosted. She was alone exactly as I'd felt. The final stroke was public, subtle but devastating. I funded an art installation through Marla, displayed at a rival gallery. Titled Reflections, it featured mirrors etched with Claire's sketches. Her texts projected faintly, her real name whispered in an audio loop. It was abstract, deniable, but those in the know, her former circle, would understand. The piece drew crowds, critics praising its raw commentary on identity. Claire saw it online, a post from a friend who didn't know it was about her. She broke down, locking herself in the guest room. I moved out with the kids, leaving Claire in the house she'd soon lose. The divorce papers were served a day later, my terms unyielding. She signed, defeated, her fight gone. My revenge was complete. Not with violence, but with precision, stripping her of Lila, her career, her family, her pride. I felt no joy, only a hollow victory. Claire's betrayal had cost us both, but I'd ensured she paid the heavier price. As I drove away with Lily and Max, their laughter filling the car, I knew I'd rebuild. Claire, I doubted, ever would. Life without Claire began quietly. I rented a cozy house across town, closer to the kids' school, and filled it with their favorite things. Lily's art supplies, Max's model trains. They asked about Mommy, and I said she was figuring things out, keeping my tone neutral. The divorce was pending, but my lawyer, Rachel, assured me Claire had no leverage. The evidence of her financial misconduct, diverting our savings to Ethan's collective, guaranteed I'd keep primary custody and most assets. Claire was living in our old house, but the bank was circling. Foreclosure was weeks away. I checked on her indirectly, through Marla, who posed as a concerned acquaintance. Claire was a wreck, barely leaving the house, her phone disconnected. Her art career was dead. Galleries blacklisted her, and her illustrations, once celebrated, were mocked online as Lila's leftovers. The Reflections installation had cemented her infamy, its cryptic references to her betrayal dissected by art blogs. I didn't gloat, but I felt a cold satisfaction. She'd erased me from her life. I'd erased her from hers. At night, I'd sit with a whiskey, replaying the betrayal. Claire's sketches of Ethan, her secret life as Lila, the way she'd laughed with him at the farmer's market. It still stung. But the pain was fuel driving me to protect my kids, to rebuild. I started sketching again, something I hadn't done since college. Simple designs for a new project, a community center. Felt like reclaiming myself piece by piece. Claire tried to reach out once, leaving a voicemail on my work phone. "Daniel, I'm sorry. I want to see the kids." Her voice was frail, desperate. I didn't respond. She'd lost that right when she chose Ethan, when she built a world without us. Rachel advised supervised visits, but I wasn't ready. The kids were thriving, their laughter a bomb. Claire's absence was a wound, but I'd make sure it didn't scar them. I heard rumors Ethan had left Seattle, his collective dissolved, his reputation as ruined as Claire's. I didn't care. My revenge wasn't about him. It was about her, about making her feel the weight of her choices. Marla sent me a final photo. Claire at a bus stop, head down, clutching a worn sketchbook. She looked like a stranger, not the woman I'd loved. I deleted the photo, closing that chapter. My focus was forward, but one last act remained. A coda to ensure Claire's lesson was permanent. I wanted Claire to carry her betrayal forever, not just in shame, but in memory. The Reflections installation had been a public blow, but I needed something personal, enduring. I contacted an old friend, Nora, a curator in Portland with no ties to Seattle's art scene. I proposed an anonymous commission, a traveling exhibit, small but poignant, to follow Claire wherever she went. Nora, intrigued by the concept, agreed without knowing the target. The exhibit, called Echoes, was subtle but devastating. It featured anonymous portraits, sketches resembling Claire's style, paired with fragmented texts about trust and deception. The centerpiece was a mirror etched with a single word, truth. Visitors were invited to write their own betrayals on paper, burning them in a ceremonial bowl. The exhibit's theme was universal, but for Claire, it would be a haunting mirror. I funded it through a shell account, ensuring anonymity, and arranged for it to debut in Seattle, then follow Claire's movements. Marla tracked Claire's plans. She was selling the house's remaining furniture, planning to move to Tacoma, a fresh start. I tipped Nora, and Echoes was scheduled for a Tacoma gallery the month Claire arrived. The exhibit would dog her, Portland, Spokane, wherever she fled, each iteration slightly altered but always carrying her shadow. She'd see it or hear of it, and know her past wasn't gone. It wasn't cruel in the public's eyes. It was art. To Claire, it was a ghost. I kept my life separate. The kids were adjusting, their school projects piling up. I took them hiking, taught Max to sketch trees, watched Lily paint. Their resilience was my anchor. At work, my community center design won a local award, a small victory that felt like defiance. Claire's betrayal had nearly broken me, but I was building something new, something she couldn't touch. Claire sent a letter, hand-delivered to my office. "I'm leaving Seattle. I know I hurt you. I'll respect your boundaries, but please let me see the kids someday." I burned it, not out of anger, but to close the loop. She'd see the kids when I decided, not her. Echoes was my final word, a reminder she'd carry like a scar. I pictured her in Tacoma walking past a gallery, seeing the exhibit's poster, her breath catching. That image was enough. My revenge was complete, woven into her future, invisible but inescapable. Claire moved to Tacoma in late summer, renting a cramped apartment above a coffee shop. Marla's updates were sparse but detailed. Claire worked part-time as a barista, her art untouched, her social life non-existent. The Echoes exhibit opened at a small Tacoma gallery, its posters plastered downtown. I didn't attend, but Nora sent me a report. Claire had wandered in, drawn by the crowd, unaware it was my design. She stood before the mirror, staring at truth, her face crumpling as she read the texts. Phrases I'd pulled from her own messages to Ethan, anonymized but unmistakable. Nora said Claire left quickly, dropping a note in the burn bowl. It read, "I lost everything for a lie. The gallery staff burned it as instructed, but Nora photographed it for me." I studied the image, Claire's shaky handwriting a final confession. She knew, on some level, that the exhibit was about her. The knowledge was my last blade, cutting without contact. Echoes was a success, booked for Portland next, then Boise. Wherever Claire went, it would follow a quiet specter. Back home, I focused on the kids. Lily asked if Mommy was coming back, her voice small. I hugged her, saying, "Mommy's finding her way, but we're okay." Max drew a picture of our new house, me in the center, Claire absent. Their healing was my priority, and I shielded them from the rumors still swirling online. Claire's scandal had faded from public view, but Tacoma's art scene was buzzing about Echoes, its mystery fueling speculation. Some blogs linked it to Lila, but no one traced it to me. I met with Rachel to finalize the divorce. Claire didn't contest it, signing away her claims. The house sold, the proceeds split unevenly in my favor. She had enough for her apartment, nothing more. I donated her old sketchbooks to a thrift shop, erasing her presence from our lives. The kids' new routines, school, soccer, art classes, were a rhythm I cherished. My community center broke ground, my designs coming to life. I was moving forward, but Claire's shadow lingered, tethered by Echoes. Marla called with a final update. Claire had visited the gallery again, alone, standing before the mirror for an hour. She didn't write another note, just left. Her shoulders slumped. I thanked Marla, paid her last invoice, and cut contact. My revenge was self-sustaining now, a machine I'd built to outlast my anger. Claire's betrayal had reshaped me, but I'd turned her lie into my truth, a legacy of consequence she'd never escape. 2 years passed. The kids were taller, their questions about Claire rarer. Lily, now 12, painted landscapes that rivaled her mother's old work. Max, 9, built model cities with me. We were a unit, whole despite the fracture. My community center opened, a glass and wood haven for Seattle's families. At the ribbon cutting, I felt Claire's absence, a faint echo, but it didn't hurt. I'd rebuilt, stronger. Claire's life, from what I gleaned, was a shadow. Echoes followed her, Portland, Boise, even a small gallery in Missoula when she moved again. Each time, she'd visit, as if drawn to her own punishment. Art blogs still mentioned Lila occasionally, a cautionary tale, but Claire herself was forgotten, her barista jobs her only anchor. She'd written once, asking for supervised visits with the kids. I allowed it 1 hour at a park with Rachel present. Claire was thin, her eyes dull, her laughter forced. The kids were polite but distant. She didn't ask for more. I'd stopped tracking her, but Nora sent updates on Echoes. It had become a cult favorite, its anonymity fueling its allure. Some artists tried to claim it, but Nora, loyal to my instructions, kept my secret. The exhibit's texts evolved, incorporating new stories of betrayal from visitors, but Claire's essence remained. Her sketches, her mirrored truth. It was my cruelest act, ensuring her past was a public artifact, inescapable. I dated briefly a kind teacher named Sarah, but it didn't last. My trust, shattered by Claire, hadn't fully healed. I was content with the kids, my work, my sketches. At night, I draw, not Claire or Ethan, but abstract forms, lines of loss and renewal. The pain of her betrayal was a scar, not a wound. I wondered if she felt the same, or if echoes kept her bleeding. A colleague mentioned seeing Claire at a Missoula art fair, selling cheap prints under a new name. She'd looked tired, he said, but was trying to draw again. I nodded, unmoved. Her attempt to rebuild was her own battle. Mine was won. Echoes would find her in Missoula, its next stop already booked. My revenge wasn't about destruction anymore. It was about permanence, a reminder that betrayal has a price, paid in mirrors and memory. 5 years after the exhibit, I got a package, no return address. Inside was a single sketch, Claire's style unmistakable. A woman in a red dress, standing before a mirror, the word truth faintly etched. No note, no signature, but it was her. I stared at it, feeling neither anger nor pity, just recognition. She'd seen Echoes again. Its final showing was in Denver, where she'd settled, working in a bookstore. The exhibit had run its course, its funding depleted, but its impact lingered, a legend in art circles. I hung the sketch in my office not as a trophy, but as a reminder. Claire's betrayal had reshaped me, taught me resilience, the power of precision. The kids were teenagers now, Lily-winning art awards, max coding apps. They rarely mentioned Claire, their visits with her brief, obligatory. She tried to rebuild, Marla told me once, but her art never recovered. Echoes had branded her, its shadow too long. I visited the Denver gallery before Echoes closed, my first time seeing it. The mirror was worn, its etchings faint, but truth still gleamed. Visitors wrote their stories, burned them, moved on. I wrote nothing, just stood where Claire had, imagining her here, facing herself. I left, the weight of my revenge lifting. It had been cruel, yes, but measured. Her lie had cost us a life. My truth had cost her a name. Back home, I burned Claire's sketch, scattering the ashes in the yard. The kids were laughing inside, planning a camping trip. My community center thrived, my designs in demand. I was whole not because of revenge, but despite it. Claire, I assumed, lived with her mirror, her truth a quiet cage. Echoes was gone, but its lesson endured. For her, for me, betrayal builds its own consequences, and some mirrors never break.